Good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. Tonight we will complete this bracelet and then maybe do something else, but we shall see. So I will just get out the rings that we opened last night. Just kept them in a bag just to keep them separate from the rest of the rings. Then I wasn't picking out open rings from non-open rings. Keeping Ziploc bags is quite useful. Right. Just press them out of it. It'll be a little bit awkward, but never mind. Right, change glasses. You'll be able to see better, that will help. Which reminds me, let's make an appointment. Anyway, right, so carry on where we left off basically. So where's my pliers? There and here. Gold. No, it's not gold, it's yellow. I will get used to this probably about the time that I stop needing to say it. Okay. Nope, that's twisted itself through the other ring, which is not what I want. Sometimes it just feels like these rings are out to troll you. I've done it again. Yep, I have done it again. There. Is that right this time? Yep, that's right this time. Now then, if I remember rightly, this was about 3 inches long, so we've actually got to double the length of it before it's ready to become a bracelet. And of course, if I wanted it to be a necklace, it would have to be quite a bit longer. But I think we'll probably leave this one as a bracelet. But if anybody's interested in buying it as a necklace, it can be made. That's not not difficult at all. And if anybody wants to buy one, they can even actually see it made on stream if they want to do so. Rings, why are you being awkward tonight? Hello, Felix. Anybody that's watching, we may have a special guest star for this evening. He's in the I would say green room, but it's blue, and he may drop in. Again, he may not. But he's sat warming himself at the moment on the computer. And the yellow one wants to be on the other side of this, on that side there. And that one has moved, as they do sometimes. They relax back to the position they've been in for a long time. In theory, this should not be that difficult to do, so I don't quite know what's making it awkward, but it's proving to be a little bit awkward tonight. Well, for anybody that's watching that doesn't know, what you're looking at is jewellery making using a technique of weaving rings together called chainmail. So chainmail is the method of weaving the rings together. It's not armour, as most people think it is. You construct armour using chainmail techniques, and essentially that's where the name has come from. But for armour, in ye olde times, they would use iron rings and they would rivet them together. These are aluminium, which have been anodised, which is what gives them the colour and makes them, well, partly makes them shiny, and that's partly the polishing. And these are just twisted together then to twisted to line up the ends, and when you do that correctly, the ends all but vanish. Usually you can't see the ends, and quite often you can't even feel them. Which, if you end up needing to take it apart for any reason, as you sometimes do if you make a slight mistake, then it can be quite challenging to find the right place on the ring to actually open it again. Right. Nearly. So, using two different sizes of rings here. So this is a weave known as a box weave. Probably because it resembles a box. You know, it's a rectangular sort of shape. And it's quite a common weave that's used for jewellery purposes. It's quite a popular one, along with Byzantine, which is probably the most well-known weave and well-known jewellery, sort of bracelet type of chain. Which is actually chainmail, even though most people don't know that and wouldn't recognise it as such. And all I'm doing here is using two different colours. What I'm doing is alternating the way in which the colours are going in, and it's actually the silver and the yellow are rotating around each other like a helix. So it's quite a subtle look. If you study it carefully, you can see the helix, but otherwise it just produces a really nice sort of subtle pattern that you don't really see in detail. But I think actually it's got the two colours together are really a nice combination. And the box weave is made up of units of 4 rings. In this particular case I'm using 2 large rings and 2 slightly smaller rings, if I can get them to let go of each other. And then the smaller rings fold back over the larger rings, and that's what actually sort of interlocks the weave together. But it's almost exactly the same as a Byzantine weave, except Byzantine does more or less the same thing, but interspaces each of these units, these blocks, with just a pair of rings to space them out. And yellow. Oops, there's it. I do keep trying to escape. Just using the cocktail stick here just to help me place the rings in the correct place. Any fine point tool will do it. Cocktail stick is nice, it's not metal, it won't tend to scratch the rings at all. Although they're not particularly susceptible to being scratched, a sharp object can scratch them. So you do have to take a little bit of care. One of the nice things about the anodized aluminium rings is unlike silver, for example, sterling silver, it doesn't tarnish. So I was about to say it stays shiny. It sometimes won't stay shiny, but essentially it's just dirty, and all that you need to do is just wash the bracelet with some sort of soft soap, so hand soap, something like that, and that causes it to regain its shine. It's also aluminium. It doesn't contain nickel or substances like that, so for people with sensitive skin or allergies, it's quite good jewellery from that purpose. I wouldn't say it's impossible to be allergic to it. I'm sure there is the possibility, but you know, most sort of other substances that people would tend to be allergic to in jewellery are just not present with aluminium, with the aluminium that's used here. And when I do use a clasp at the moment, I'm using sterling silver clasps, so that also avoids allergies. And also, unlike with silver plated clasps, for example, there are a number of special people that for some reason the silver plate just wears off, often within a matter of hours when somebody's wearing it. So and then you with silver plated or gold plated, you then get back to sort of the underlying copper plating that's being done, and sometimes even back to the base metal, which can be things like nickel. So using the sterling silver clasps, it's solid sterling silver, so that avoids that problem, and you retain the silver colour, and also, of course, there's less chance of any allergies from the base metals that may have been used with plated materials. So again, this is just really repeating the same thing time after time in terms of the pattern. I'm doing some fairly simple jewellery here, partly just sort of experimenting with the colour pattern that I'm using, but there's no reason, for example, why I couldn't just change weaves mid bracelet. That's perfectly possible to do. There's a lot of weaves that use the double ring format, Byzantine being an obvious one, so I could quite easily at this point break into a Byzantine weave, or I can also go into something a lot more complicated like candy cane, for example, or even going into some of the Persian weaves, either full Persian, half Persian, or some of the variations on that, and I'm putting that ring in completely the wrong place. It needs to go between these two here. Exilian, good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. Why is that? That is not doing what I want it to do because it's missing a ring. Yeah. I was wondering then why I couldn't grab hold of the right ring with the cocktail stick to space them out. That's because I couldn't grab what wasn't there. There we go. Now I can put these other rings back on. So I trust you are well this evening, Exilian. And come on, yeah, I mentioned it earlier, these rings are being real trolls tonight. I'm just not wanting to go into the right positions. I'm fairly convinced that yes I have. There we go. No gingerbreads, but good. Okay. Yeah, I've still got some donuts left, although I may have cauliflower after the stream, or because I like raw cauliflower. In fact, quite often, if you offer me, for example, a choice between, let's say, chocolate and cauliflower, raw cauliflower, I'll take the cauliflower. I had some jalapeno peppers last night on cheese sticks, and I thought they were going to be nice because I quite enjoy raw peppers, or pickled raw peppers. There weren't anything to write home about, to be honest. I was kind of disappointed in them. I sound very healthy. It is, I suppose. It's cheaper as well. Oh well, it is some of the time anyway. Yeah, apart from liking the taste, it's crunchy and I can basically eat as much as I like without too much of a problem. And you know, it's not like chocolate where you're kind of worried you're going to end up putting on weight or something like that with it. Perhaps, you know, cauliflower. Vegetables, have as much as you like. Same with broccoli, actually. I like broccoli raw, same reason. In fact, quite a few vegetables. I'm just thinking now, because I quite often have carrots raw, and then with things like mushrooms. Raw mushrooms, onions, though those are, I tend to have those more in sort of like salads than actually sort of just on their own. Oh, I see. That ring is... Oh, that's that faulty ring. I don't know where the bin is. Put it there. Oh, popcorn, yes. Yeah, definitely popcorn. I like popcorn as well. Although I prefer, I don't care very much for air popped popcorn. Excuse me a second. Oh, I was just about to stop this cat from scratching the top of the computer. So pan made popcorn, I prefer, and generally speaking, then just a little bit of salt on it. Yeah, I generally make a. I guess I generally make a big panful. it always amuses. Well, you'll probably possibly know, but of course the kernels are little tiny things, so you get like a very couple of spoonfuls of kernels, and suddenly you end up with this great big pack, big bowl full of popcorn, and then just sit back and watch a video and eat popcorn. Salted, yeah, salted popcorn. Yeah, I'm not fantastically keen on in cinemas over here they sort of put like a toffee on it or things like that. I'm not particularly into that. I don't mind flavoured popcorn. Can't get it now, but at one time you could get like a flavouring powder like cheese and onion or something like that you could sprinkle on, and they used to be quite nice. But yeah, salted popcorn. Of course, the trick with salted popcorn is getting just the right amount of salt, not too much and not too little. Yeah. I've got it's like an electric pan popcorn maker. It's basically just an electrically heated plate, but it's got a clear plastic cover over the top, so when they pop, they don't jump out all over the place. But yeah, bit of butter in, melted into the bottom, and then the popcorn kernels in, and watch it for 3 minutes whilst they all pop. I actually find it a bit easier than trying to do them in an actual pan over a stove. I have done that in the past, but I tend to burn them that way if I'm not careful. And it still surprises me how what is effectively, well, as you know, the kernels, really hard things, and yet put them in a pan for a few minutes and they pop out into this great big white fluffy thing, which sort of, how did that fit inside? And they're then really soft. And you look like a stupid idiot. So what? You want to pay several £1,000s for chainmail armour, Ultimate Tiber? You're welcome to do it. And if you want it done the traditional way, you'll need to find a blacksmith. Yeah, possibly. I mean, the electrically heated pan is just a pan, and for me, they pick up the flavour from the butter, because I generally pop them in butter. I haven't seen that. I did see on one program them making there's a, I don't know if you have the same cereals, but in the UK there's a cereals called Rice Krispies, which is popped rice, and showed how they make that in basically a giant pressure cooker. It would take up an awfully lot of time, to be honest. You're looking at tens of hours to make something like that. It really isn't. It really isn't cost effective for somebody. If you take a look on eBay, for example, you can quickly find that chainmail armour, like vests and things like that. You can buy for really tiny amounts of money, relatively speaking, because they're actually knit on a machine. They literally knit them, and it takes, depends on the speed of the machine, but it sort of takes an hour to make what would take 50-60 hours to do by hand. So oh dear. I am either really out of practice, or these rings are just having fun with me. This really isn't a hard weave. And they're just proving a little bit awkward to do. Yeah. Yeah, that's chainmail in wool. That's an interesting one. In plastic, yes, I can understand that, and I guess if you're after something lightweight, then plastic is potentially a good alternative. I mean, the thing about plastic is it can make the plastic look like metal, so unless you get close to it, you probably couldn't tell the difference. Of course, anybody playing these sort of going through these live action replay things probably want the real metal. Just from the perspective of they actually do get hit sometimes with some of these weapons, and the chainmail has to do what it was designed to do. Can't imagine how they do it with wool. But, oh, I guess, I suppose with wool you could use wool stitches, which if you do it on large needles, then the stitches are big, and so it would tend to look like chainmail, I guess. Okay. I was about to say you should know all about it then, but it depends on on if they're doing historic and what era, or if they're doing fantasy, which of course would be completely different. You might keep hearing Felix. If you hear a cat meow like just then, that is Felix, who's sat at the end of the desk. I don't actually know why he's meowing. He's probably just seeking attention. But last it, yeah. Oh, historical. Okay. Well, there's plenty of history to go at. This side. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong side. Ought to have known. That ring went through so easily. Yeah, mind you, there isn't many hobbies that aren't. In some way expensive, I guess. That's just something you accept, I guess, if you want to undertake that hobby in particular. What I feel is that politics is not a subject for discussion on the channel. One of the I am also a licensed radio amateur in the UK, and one of the conditions of the license is a number of subjects that you are not supposed to discuss on air, of amateur radio, which applies really nicely to broadcast video like this as well. And two of them are politics and religion, and your question encompasses both. This looks to be something like about 6 inches long. Let's have a look and just put a ring through it. Well, actually, I'll put 2 rings through here and then take a look at how long this is. Yellow wants to be on, oh come along rings, yellow wants to be on this side, like that. Right, let's have a look and see how long that is. Well, that's not long enough, but let's just see how long it is. We're what there, 5.25 inches thereabouts. So we've actually only about 1.5 inches left to go. Right, we will need to get some more rings out in a moment, but at least I think so. I might surprise myself. Sometimes they go further than they look, especially as I've got 4 different sets of rings on the table here. There's small silver and gold and yellow, and there's large silver and yellow. And when you do that, every time you sort of pick one from each, you've just used 4 rings, so you don't get through them particularly fast, but it does grow relatively quickly. Yeah. So hopefully you can actually see what I'm doing on that camera. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's really hard doing this to get a good camera view. Because if it's too close, then just about anything else that I do is off frame and difficult to see if I just move it slightly. And yet, you know, I can try things like top-down view, but then you don't necessarily see what I'm actually doing, or because then you're sort of just looking at it. Kind of like you look at it from that angle, and you can't really see much that's going on. Reef Daddy, good evening. Thank you for following the studio. That's kind of you. I may try tomorrow is a different view, sort of over my shoulder type of view, or so you're seeing more of what I'm seeing rather than looking at it from the opposite side of the desk. Actually, not tomorrow. Day after. I won't be broadcasting tomorrow. So unfortunately, depends on your point of view, but yeah, I'll be too busy tomorrow to be able to stream on. So my next stream after tonight will be on Friday, hopefully. And since I'm on holiday as of Friday, well, Friday night, I should be able to stream. And work is unlikely to be getting in the way. As it has been doing for the past few weeks now. Okay. Right, so yeah, I was just carrying on, and again, for those people who may be watching that are lurking there in chat, you're seeing me making jewellery. I'm making it use a technique called chainmail, hence the chainmail in the title. A lot of people will think of chainmail as being armour, the sort of stuff medieval knights and things used to wear. In actual fact, they didn't wear well, what they wore was armour made using chainmail techniques. So chainmail is the method of interweaving the rings. Like carpentry is the way of shaping wood. But it's, for a long time, of course, that was principally the only use of chainmail, was to make armour, so it kind of just got synonymous with that. But now, of course, with all the lovely colours and the different materials, the technique is used a lot for jewellery like this. And but of course, people still think of it as armour, and they're so quite surprised often when you talk about, something like a Byzantine bracelet, for example, which is what a lot of people are familiar with, and that's chainmail. So quite a few people own chainmail, even though they didn't know it. Now this is made out of aluminium. The armour stuff, if it's authentic, is made from iron, and for armour purposes they usually riveted the rings together. For jewellery purposes we use all sorts of substances. This one is aluminium, and it's been anodised to give the different colours. Stainless steel gets used, titanium is another one that gets used, usually anodised for titanium, get some lovely colours. There's another alloy that I can't for the life of me remember, but use sterling silver as well. Copper gets used. You can even use gold for that matter, but we're really expensive. I'm fine, thank you, Ultimate Tiba. Hopefully it wasn't no, I've not dropped any frames, so I'm doing okay, thank you, and I trust you are as well. Aluminium is used a lot for this sort of thing because it's lightweight, very lightweight, so that often is quite good. It doesn't tarnish, is another thing. Sterling silver, for example, will tarnish, and it's easy to work with. Because aluminium is a relatively soft metal. I don't mean you can squish it, but it is a relatively soft metal compared with, say, stainless steel, for example. It's quite a difficult material to work, or titanium, both of which take quite a bit of effort. And for jewellery purposes, you don't need the really high strength. I mean, one of the things about the fact that you interweave rings, you're into sort of material technology, but this is about load sharing and things like that. So these rings actually will take quite a lot of pull or stress without actually even bending. Not that I encourage anybody to try it, to be honest. You can bend them, you can pull them apart, but it does take effort. What I'm going to do is I've got two small silver rings here which I'll use, and then I'll see how much further I have to go to complete this, and then get some more rings out. Oops, that's on the other side. So if you weren't here at the start, this is a weave that's called a box weave. Not exactly sure why it's called a box weave, other than it's box shaped. It's four-sided. That is perhaps where the name has come from, but I don't actually know. Quite a lot of weaves are just named after whatever the people thought was a good idea. I mean, for example, you get the Persian weaves, which literally have nothing to do with Persia, and probably were invented in a completely different part of the world. But somebody just thought, hey, wouldn't it be good to name them Persian, and it sort of happened. And of course these days with the internet, and there are actually thousands of weaves, people invent them and call them what they like to call them. And that ring will not, there we go right through the correct place, there we are. That must be on this side. Yeah, I'm putting these colours on in a particular order. It's not particularly visible unless you study it in a little bit more detail, but the two colours are winding around each other in a double helix style around this chain, which is it's quite a subtle pattern, just because the silver and the yellow are relatively close to each other colour wise. So it doesn't immediately stand out like if I'd used silver and black, for example. But what it does is, if you study it for a moment or two, you see there is sort of a pattern there, but you have to study it for even longer to understand what the pattern is. But it does look like quite a nice sort of pattern, just because of the way that they interweave with each other. Now then, I'm going to need some more rings out, so I will measure this, give me an idea of how many I need. 6 inches. So we're probably only needing about another 5 or 6 rings of each of the size and colours. So hopefully I've got enough. Yeah. I'm saying hopefully I've got enough. I know I've got enough. I've got a whole box full of rings. This is just sort of a quick access set of storage. Okay, that should be enough of that size of ring, and I think I probably need a few of the yellow of the other size. That might be enough. I can always get some more out, and it will if I don't get too many out, because I don't need too many more, then at least you're not watching me open rings for the next 30 minutes. I know for the next bracelet I want some more silver, so but we'll get to that when this one's done. So anybody that's watching, whilst I'm doing that, I will just point out the chainmail shop, or the jewellery shop on Etsy. I of course would recommend that you take a look if you're interested in any of this sort of jewellery. The pictures you're watching or seeing in the bottom left of the screen, all the jewellery pictures there are stuff which has been made on stream, and most, if not all of it, is available in the shop. The The other things like the train that's showing at the moment, which is Punchcraft, is stuff that's been made on the stream but isn't yet available in that shop. It will be at some point. It just takes time to get things there, and Moobot will from time to time drop the link into chat. And if you're sort of interested in some of the jewellery but don't want to wait, there's 3 pieces which are available on eBay at the moment, and if Moobot doesn't drop the link into chat shortly, if you just want to mention it in chat, I'll throw the link up if anybody wants to take a look. So most of the stuff on Etsy is made to order because it's made to the size that you want, and also 20 colour variations as well. As if you just saw the tray of rings that I had out a moment ago, there's 15 different colours available. This is just 2 of them, yellow and silver, but there is, what have we got? Green, purple, red, royal blue, silver, pink, lavender, bronze, champagne, what else is there? Orange, yeah, black ice, which is kind of a gunmetal colour. There's sky blue as well, and white. Yeah, white. This is silver. White is like a frosted white, and white's the only one which isn't actually shiny. So that picture on the bottom left at the moment is the Persian. It's a half Persian, 3-in-1, as it's called. It's called 3-in-1 because each of the major rings had 3 other rings passing through it. That picture of the rose is carving, and the dragon there. It's a dragon called Ruth. That is also being done on stream. We have been carving on stream. It's a type of carving called relief carving. And the pictures that's popping up now is pyrography, often known as wood burning, but very rarely do you burn the wood. It's more of a cooking process, and you don't see naked flames either. There are people that do it with naked flames, blow torches and things like that on really big pieces. I'm in the house and using a blowtorch. I use an electrically heated tool. And that in the bottom left there is a necklace, actually using exactly the same weave. So you can see the difference when if you saw it, between sort of 2 colours and multicolour. Now that's on that side. This is on this side. So, that's candy cane. It's quite that's a really interesting weave, but I'd say that because I enjoyed making it, but I do like that candy cane. I was going to say some of the other pictures that might come up on there are, if you see the black and white looking things, they're scraper board. That's a board essentially made with china clay covered with black ink, and then you scrape away the ink to reveal the white underneath, to then create a black and white picture. And you can also use ink to colour it afterwards, and it produces some quite dramatic and quite impressive looking pictures. Again, I made them say that, but I do actually think that they are quite they do actually provide quite spectacular pictures. There are some weaves. The Persians are one which are really difficult to start, because you've got to keep the rings in the right position, and if they're not, it just doesn't work. But even doing this one there, if a ring slips out of position, it gets quite tricky. It has done there to slot a ring where you want it, because you've just closed up the gap that you're trying to get it through. So it's not as difficult to sort out as as the half Persians are if you accidentally lose your starting position. But there we go. What you see me doing, if you'll keep seeing me as I close a ring like this. Oops, there's it. You will see me tip it towards myself, and all I'm literally doing is just checking to see that the ring is actually closed properly, and it has a smooth join. Sometimes when you're doing this weave, this one, you see me use the cocktail stick a heck of a lot to just position the rings. There are times when I've done this this same weave, and just as soon as you push the fold the rings over as you need to do, they just all pop into place and stay like that. For some reason, this one's choosing not to. That's on this side, that one's on that side. Again, I'm spiraling these around each other, so I've got to make sure I put the rings on the correct side. They won't interchange once they're woven in. They won't interchange. They're actually in a fixed position, so they have to be placed in the correct position to start with. And put a gold one on, and then what I'm going to do is just take a look at well, how long this is. It's very easy to get carried away and you suddenly end up being several inches longer than you need to be. And what happens then is either you carry on and make a bracelet, or you take it apart, or take some of it apart. So we'll see how long this one is. It's getting close to the right length, if it's not actually the right length now. I think we'll drop another 2 sets of rings on this, which is convenient given that I've got 2 large gold rings left, and then it should be of sufficient size, and we'll put the ends and the clasp on. And then we'll call it a bracelet. Now, whilst that was kind of a half pun stroke joke, it isn't actually a bracelet until it's a bracelet, so until I put the clasp on the end it can't be used as one, so I guess I'm only exaggerating the joke slightly. Okay, and gold. Actually, I'll put these 2 on, and then I will measure it again. Only from the point of view is that I've got 1 gold large ring left, and if I want to make it longer I have to get some more out, so if I don't need to I won't get any more out. So before I fasten that ring I'll measure it, because if it's the right length, and it is, what I will do is I will put a clasp on before I close it up. And actually I won't put a clasp on before I close it up, because of the way I want the clasp to lay. So in actual fact I'm not going to put that ring on there at all. What I'm going to do is put the smaller ring on. That's assuming I can get this one back out. You might think it's easy. Sometimes it's harder to get a ring out of the weave than it was to put it in the first place. Now the reason I'm doing that is because, in fact I'll put 2 on in the right sequence. So it'll be silver on that side, gold on this side. I'm creating a transition from the box weave to the clasp. If I use the big rings here, it would look a little sort of out of place, a little odd. So if you use the smaller rings, it doesn't sort of leap out at you quite so much as being sort of an odd sort of layout. Now what I'm going to do is just use a single ring here on its own and put the clasp on. Now the reason for using this single ring here is I actually want, I suppose I could put 2 through, and I may well do that. I'll have a look in a second. The reason for adding another ring on is when I lay this down, which is kind of how you'd wear it, the clasp wants to lay on its side like that. Now if I'd put it on the not this ring I've just put on but the ones before it would want to tend to sit upright, which is kind of unnatural for the thing, and it will flop over and tend to twist the bracelet or annoy you, one or the other. So by putting this extra ring on, I turn the clasp through 90 degrees. Now this one is actually big enough, I think, for me to get a second ring through, so I'm going to do that just because it looks nicer to do that sometimes. I'll have a look actually having put it through and see if I like it. And yeah, it's wide enough, so well, we'll fasten it up and we'll take a look. And this is really only so I can keep the, don't need 2 rings here, but it just keeps the silver and the yellow as a pair together as part of the theme, and that looks okay. So what I'm going to do now on the other end though is just put a single ring. In fact, I'd probably I'll put a single ring on and we'll see what it looks like, and I'm going to do that actually using a big ring. The reason for using a big ring is it's easier to put the clasp through it when you're trying to fasten it than it would be to use a single ring. So to use a smaller ring. Let me just get rid of that, and then we have bracelet, and if I've done this right, that will go through there, and I've got a I've put a twist. Have I put a twist in it? No, I haven't. So there we go. Yeah, I have put a twist in it. Nothing wrong with it. There we go. That would be how it would be, you know, intend it to be worn, if you like. And as you can see, the clasp lies flat. Without this single ring here, or without this double pair of rings here, the clasp would tend to sit upright, and the bracelet would sort of twist on you, which can become a little bit annoying. But of course, this is it's a bracelet. You can do what you like with it. One of the nice things about these is it is flexible enough to actually put a twist in it. And I can probably get another one in there as well. Let's try and put another twist in. Now if you do that, it does, it does then tend to sort of sit not quite as cleanly on you, but as you sort of, yeah, have I untwisted it? No. It works better with with necklaces actually, where you get a twist in it, but you get that sort of effect, which of course just makes a more interesting pattern. But there we go. That is a yellow and silver double helix box chain completed. Okay. Right, so I am going to put these little silver ones away. Yep, that's the right ones. Because I don't need those. I want to now do a little bit of candy cane. I just want to have an experiment with the candy cane. So I need silver. Cheers. Those. Yep. Excuse me while I have a drink of tea. So I will need some more yellow because I think I'll try the silver and yellow again. Oh, maybe too subtle. Well, let me open these silver. Let's get some of these silver out. And reseal that packet so they don't go all over the place. Right, right. Okie dokie. I wanted some more yellow out, but I'm going to open some of these. Sorry, I was just looking for my instructions that I use for candy cane. It's once you've got it's like most of these things. Once you got it started, it's easy. But I'd say that because I know what I'm doing. But once you it's a case of it's like learning lines or something like that. Once or riding a bike, I guess you sort of don't know how you know, but once you get on the bike and start riding again, it comes back to you and you can ride a bike. Chainmail weaves are a bit like that as well. Once as long as you can remember how to start them and you get into them, then the rest just comes. You just keep remembering it and you go from there. But sometimes starting it, and it's one of those weird things. If you start a weave, like I started a box weave there, for example, and let's say I make a mistake and put an extra 2 rings on, which would make it look like a Byzantine start. I'm just as likely to carry on making Byzantine chain for a while before I go, hang on a minute, wasn't I making box? And it's kind of like a muscle memory thing that gets you. And you intend to start with something else, and either your mind slips or just something, and you end up starting to make something completely different. Right, so if you're not seeing what I'm doing, I'm opening the rings. The way the rings are made they're actually made from wire, so a long length of wire, which is wrapped around a cylindrical form. It's called a mandrel, and they're what they're called close wound, so each wind of wire is actually touching the one before it. And when you finish, then you get basically a big long spiral. What they then do is take a very fine saw, like a jeweler's saw for example, or some form of mechanical saw which is really thin, or rotary saw type of thing, and then they slice down the length of the spiral. And when you do that, that separates each loop of the spiral from the next one and forms a ring, but with the ends sort of offset very slightly to one another. It's actually offset one width of the wire. Now, to use the rings, you either need to close that gap up to create what's called a closed ring, or you need to open it up so that you can pass the ring through others, because there isn't enough of a gap to start with to be able to feed it through another ring. So what I'm doing here is opening the rings. Sometimes you'll close them for some weaves, like for example the box weave. I could have done it by closing all the the little rings first, and then as I put the big rings on, I incorporate pick up the closed ring as well, so I'm sort of thinking one step ahead. And there is an advantage to doing that, because closing a ring when you're holding just one of them in your hand is a heck of a lot easier than trying to do it when you're holding two pairs of pliers and the piece that you're working on plus the ring. And it has a speed advantage then as well. It is actually quicker. And of course, if you're selling things in a shop, like some of what I do here, time is what is a large element of the cost. So if you can reduce the time, the piece is cheaper. I don't quite know how many of these I'm going to do. I'll just do a few, and then I can always open some more. I'm going to try and do a similar sort of spiral pattern in candy cane. Now, candy cane is normally made, or often made shall we say, with, often, can be, whichever you want to look at it, with 3 different colours of rings, which sort of highlight the complexity, the apparent complexity of the weave, because then you sort of, if you try and follow the colours through, of course they're always sort of changing and interweaving. What I'm going to try and do here, and in some ways it makes it a little bit harder, is to use just 2 colours, most of it silver, but with the yellow as like an accent colour that will weave through it. And just to show you what candy cane looks like, this is candy cane. So it looks like quite a complex sort of weave. And I'm going to try and do that. I want some more of these yellow rings out. I was talking about colours. That's a set of colours. Not all some are missing because I'm just about out of them. I've got some more, but I haven't put them in here just yet. But that's just a few. That's most of the colours. Red's missing and silver's missing out of here. But we get black, black ice, bronze, red. There is some red in the bottom. You can't see it. Green, royal blue, pink, gold, champagne, lilac, orange. This blue that you see here isn't blue, it's purple. Unfortunately the camera doesn't represent it very well. It's a generic problem with the Logitech C90s. Sky blue, yellow, seafoam as it's called, kind of a mint colour, white, and I would have silver in this box here as well. Alright, so yellow is the one I'm getting out. And we'll open those up as well. Can open them with pliers, or this is a ring. One ring to open them all, as it will now be known, to borrow the Tolkien reference. It's just it's slightly quicker than the pliers because I don't have to position the pliers. I can just this is very like just getting hold of the ring and holding it and twisting it with one hand, but because it's too small, and relatively speaking these rings are quite strong, it's not very easy to do. So the ring has just got a slot in it. I just position the ring between the slot and twist. Right, so blue yellow, okay, in Sweden play their hockey games. Interesting. Well, I don't know. Blue yellow. This is a stretchy bracelet, so just I think you've seen this before, but this is a royal blue, and the yellow rings are actually neoprene. So they're neoprene is a bit like rubber, but isn't. It's a man-made substance that acts like rubber, and unlike rubber, it's pretty unreactive to most things, except it doesn't like swimming pools. So chlorine or chlorinated water, as you might find in a swimming pool, it doesn't like. It does deteriorate the neoprene. But there's blue and yellow. Of course, you can actually. This is Byzantine. You can make it solid rather than stretchy. The advantage of stretchy, of course, you've got no clasp. But substituting the yellow for the yellow rings there, for example, it would go solid, and then I'd need a clasp. But yeah, you've seen that. There's all sorts of literally, I mean, any design, and especially two-colour designs, things like this. This is full Persian. That can be done in blue and yellow. It's quite a chunky bracelet, or it looks chunky, shall we say? It's sort of hollow almost. So it's very lightweight. Is this? These are a matter of a few grams. And this is a half Persian style. So again, just different colours really. A lot of the designs do work well with two colours. But I mean, having said which, of course, this is just two colours, one on each side. There isn't, in making this, for example, I could quite easily have done. I'll have a block of red and then a block of green and a block of red and a block of green or red, blue, yellow, green, and so on. So you got a lot of flexibility in making these things. Part of the fun of doing it, to be honest, is just coming up with different things and just trying different things out, like this one. This is the same full Persian as that. It's been made slightly larger though, and again uses these neoprene rings. So this, whilst it looks like a bangle, is stretchy. It's somewhat stronger to stretch, takes a bit of strength, but it's you know, it is a stretchy bracelet. I mean that you might look at that and go, I can't get it over my hand, but I can actually roll that. It's a bit strong, but I can actually roll it on, and it's over my wrist. Now I'd normally be about an 8.5 inch, and this is a 7.5 inch bracelet. But being stretchy, it goes on. Actually, I wouldn't recommend wearing that, like me, for example, because it is stretchy, so it's a little tight on you. And if it's a little too tight, it might restrict blood flow a little bit, so wouldn't be recommended. So you really want one that's the right size, and it just stretches to roll over your knuckles as you're putting it on. Yeah. But what other sorts of things can you do? I mean, just talking about blue and yellow. Talking of blue and yellow, I've got a box of jewellery here. These are all production samples. Where is it? It's in here somewhere, I think. There it is. Actually, this one's blue and gold, but that's blue. It's blue and gold. If I take a yellow ring and just, you probably can't see much of a difference there. But this is the yellow is somewhat more yellow than the gold is. I thought that probably makes it stand out a little bit more. You see the so this is more of a slightly sandy colour, which is gold is everybody thinks of gold as being quite a bright colour like these rings, but in actual fact it's a relatively dull sort of colour. But that's sky blue and that's gold. The royal blue of course is a lot darker, but again I don't know, I might have to try something like a Byzantine with royal blue and yellow. Anyway, I shall carry on. Yes, now that I kind of I do like the really solid saturated colours myself, but that's just me. It's just preference. Right, candy cane. Candy cane, yes. So okay, I'm not quite sure how this will turn out to look, but I'm going to start this by closing 4 rings. Tell you what, rather than closing rings I've just opened, I'm going to close rings I haven't opened. No particular reason for doing it, it just feels like I'm doing the same work twice if I close rings I've just opened. And since I've got a pile of neutral rings in front of me, I'm doing this in slightly, the candy cane bracelet I showed a moment ago is being done in quite large rings. I'm going to try this in these rings, which are slightly smaller. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to try it because I've done this before with this with candy cane. This produces a slightly tighter weave. Slightly smaller overall diameter of course, but the weave is slightly tighter, and it's my personal preference for candy cane is to have that slightly tighter weave, but of course it's one of these things that's personal preference really. It's like I actually enjoy working in little tiny rings and getting really sort of delicate sort of bracelets. So I mean, you've just seen, for example, a Persian here, which is that's a large ring, and the candy cane, which is also the large ring. If I do something like that in little tiny rings, I haven't got a sample of it here, but I've got a Persian here, which is a lot smaller than this one. I enjoy doing this because I just like they look really sort of dainty, and I like miniaturization as well. So, and you can go smaller than this. I'm just looking to see if I've got yeah, I like here a little tiny piece of round mail. As I was saying last night, I had a piece of box chain. I think this is 6-sided. The box is 4-sided, and it's actually the same weave, or sort of the same weave. This is called round mail, and that's box. But essentially, it's exactly the same construction, except this is 6-sided and that's 4-sided. But I had a length about 1 inch or so of the box chain alongside this. This is just under 1 inch, and yet there's more rings in this than there is in 2 inches of the large box chain. So as you can imagine, it takes at least 2 to 3 times as long to make something this size. But I do enjoy the look of something that tiny. Aldel H, hey, good evening and welcome. Right, I've just made, yeah, okay. Now then. I am going to get a little bit of wire. It often helps. Sometimes it does, sometimes it actually doesn't, but it often helps just to put a piece of wire just through the start like that. It gives you something to hold on to. When you're doing this, because as you might imagine, can be quite awkward to hold tiny rings. Right. So this is where I will then go to doing that through those two. No, those two, not one, two. Now come on. There. Okay, and this is where sometimes, well, this one doesn't seem as it's going to be too bad, although maybe I've spoken too soon. This is where when I was holding it in my hand, I was holding the rings in a particular place to form a particular shape. And when you let go like that, you lose that. And sometimes, like if you were doing this with the half Persians, just doing what I'd done there would completely lose the pattern. And it's quite complex to work out how to twist the rings to put them back into the pattern, so often it's quicker to take it apart and start again when that happens. I've now found a trick around that, but this one potentially could have done exactly the same thing. This one isn't as bad, but so far up until just recently, the half Persians, which, although I really enjoy making them, were the hardest ones to start. Having found the trick of how to do it, they're now easy, but it took quite a few before I suddenly twigged as to the easy way of starting. Now then, that's that and that. Excuse me while I just arrange things in my fingers. So that goes that way, yeah. Then I turn it that way. Yeah. and of course I go through there. Yeah. One of the with this, when I'm doing this with 3 coloured rings, 3 colours of rings, not 3 coloured rings. One of the things that happens is that as I'm doing it, I can tell whether I've got the positioning correct because of whether I'm using the right colour. Because when I put this ring through, the colours it goes through first and last, and it allows me to sort of error check myself. Now, because I'm going to be doing this using just 2 colours, I'm not going to be able to do that, so it's going to prove interesting. In actual fact, it's already proving interesting because there isn't a lot of space in there. So you go through. So this is going to be a little bit frustrating to start with. I go through there, through. This may just be a case of getting this started, and once it's started I'll then be able to do this a bit easier, but at the moment it isn't proving. I'm wondering actually if I'm using the wrong rings. Don't think so. Candy cane isn't one I've done a lot of. What I'm just about to do is just check. No, I'm not. I'm using the wrong rings. This is the one I was emulating. So both of these are candy cane, and as you can see, there's a considerable hopefully you can see there's a considerable difference in size between these rings and these rings. I actually thought that these were these, and they're not. They're actually thinner, which isn't fantastically a problem. It's just not the ones I thought it was. What it's because they're not the ones I thought it was, that's why it's not working. When you when you start working with chainmail, one of the things that becomes really important is something called aspect ratio. It's a magic number. It's not really, doesn't mean anything as such, but it's kind of important. So I'm going to put these away. It's important because it actually describes. That's the wrong box. It actually describes an effect which allows you to determine what aspect ratio is the internal diameter of the ring divided by the actual thickness of the ring. And so you come up, and then you come up with a number. So if the internal diameter of the ring is 5 millimeters and the wire is 1 millimeter thick, 5 divided by 1 is an aspect ratio of 5. It's just a number, it has no unit, so it's not millimeters or anything, it's just 5. And what that so certain weaves, the way in which they work is as you put one ring through another, you take up some of that internal space, and if you've got if you've got 2mm internal diameter and you've got a 1mm thick wire or ring, you can at most only put 4 through a 4mm internal diameter. In fact, it's probably slightly less, but my maths just aren't working tonight. You may only get 3 through, for example. Yet if you use a sort of a 6mm internal diameter, you can get a lot more through. And that's kind of what the aspect ratio helps you determine, because it doesn't actually matter how thick the wire is or how much the internal diameter is. Because if you take, for example, as I just mentioned there, 5mm internal diameter and a 1mm thick wire, you get an aspect ratio of 5. If you use a 10mm internal diameter and a 2mm thick wire, you still get an aspect ratio of 5. And that's the magic, because if you can do a weave with the 1mm wire rings, you can do exactly the same weave with the 2mm, provided the internal diameter is 10, and you still get that same aspect ratio of 5. And that's one of the powerful things about it. So the aspect ratio kind of describes the rings that you can use, but you can pick your own. If you don't want to use millimeters, you can use inches. You know, you could literally go a 5mm internal diameter, say a 5-inch internal diameter ring with a 1-inch thick wire. You might have a hell of a job twisting it, but it would actually work and produce exactly the same looking weave as you did at the smaller one. And for most weaves, you've got what they'll call an ideal, which is aspect ratio, which is where it sort of looks its nicest. So, for example, you might say, and I don't know what it is, but for candy cane, for example, this one here is probably closer to ideal, just because of the, as I'm rolling this, it's holding its shape, it's nice and fluid, it's flexible. If I do the same thing with this, it squashes slightly. Okay, so it's not the ideal aspect ratio. It's close to it, but it's not the ideal, okay, because it squashes slightly. It's still very flexible, and if you go the other way, what you'll get is it won't squash at all, of course, but it'll be a bit stiffer. So there's a range of aspect ratios, and that's generally how weaves are described. So, having discovered that I was actually getting out the wrong rings, I think it's I might get a micrometer out and measure them. I'm not actually sure it's these. Just do a quick comparison. What are these? 3/16 inch. Oh, these are the 5mm internal diameter with a 1mm wire. So these are aspect ratio of 5. Actually, I think it is these. Oh, that's right. These are 1/4 inch rings, and these are 5/16. 3/16, not 5/16, because that's bigger. 3/16, and they get you just marginally different. So I'm just measuring a quick measure. I'm not being particularly accurate, but yeah, it's these. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to get any rings out now. It is these. So to make the candy cane, I'm going to try and spiral it, but I'm not going to do it tonight because we're now at 5 to 10. I generally finish at 10 o'clock. Close enough, to be honest. Rather, because I'll spend the next 5 minutes just opening rings, so you're not going to see any more weaving tonight. So I'll start that tomorrow, and hopefully then we'll get a whole bracelet done in not tomorrow, Friday. We'll get a whole bracelet done in the one session. So what I'm going to do is say thank you to everybody that's been watching this evening. Kind of have enjoyed doing this and having you around. If you're watching and not following, I would encourage you to do so that you get notified on Friday when I go live. I should be going live on Friday. I'm on holiday. Ought to be going live. I'll point out the shop just again in case anybody hasn't seen it. And I'll also be nice and just ask Moobot to give you the link as well for that, and also for eBay, where 3 of the bracelets, that one, and I think it's that one. I think it's those 3. I'm not sure because I've actually got another one to put up. So, but 3 of the bracelets are available on eBay. You might have to take a look just to be sure which one it is. I'm not 100% sure now. So they are literally here in my hand, ready to go out if anybody wants to purchase one. The stuff from Etsy is made to measure, so they take a little bit longer to do. A day or so, obviously, depending on what else I've got to do at the time. So I'm going to say thank you again. I'm going to say follow me on Twitter if you like as well, because that way you'll get a tweet when I go live, and occasional other messages to do with new bracelets and things that are being tried out. Coming up this weekend, with a bit of luck, we'll try out the 3D pen, Creo Pop pen, cool ink, and start drawing on the table perhaps, or maybe on a piece of paper just in case. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Hopefully I'll see you on Friday, and bye for now.